Folks, I need your advice. This is a fairly long video, but we thought it was worthwhile to do this evaluation session with a young horse, all in one video, in real time, with breaks only to change video setups. Let us know if this worked for you. I really want to know whether a longer video like this that captures the real session is of use. Thanks. So folks, I'm back at my old tricks again. I've got a young horse here to evaluate for purchase. Lucky enough to have the opportunity to buy this colt from a friend who said, take him over, do whatever you want with him, get to know him and decide if you like him. So I've got him here with the opportunity to work with him and get an idea of who he is. And I'll explain what his intended purpose will be and so forth as we go forward. He's a 2-year-old colt. Right now he's in a stall. I'm gonna do this as sort of a day in the life. In other words, I would rather evaluate a horse in their natural environment. See how they react to you when they're in the stall. Get them out. Groom them, tie them, see how they're going to be. Rather than set it all up, maybe in the round pen to see how things go. Well, that gives you an evaluation, and we're going to do that. But I want to see how he is sort of in real life as well. So we're going to walk over here to the stall, and the first thing, the evaluation begins when I look in at him and I see whether he is aware of me and reacts to me. So let's walk over here. And can you get a picture of him in there? So he's in there picking out some hay. And what he does, to me, is very favorable. He leaves the hay, comes over to interact with me, see what's going on. That is a positive for me. Rather than hiding when he sees me or ignoring me, he's being drawn to me. Now, it tells me he could be a little overconfident. Okay. That's easy enough to deal with. Overconfidence is better than one that's really, really standoffish sometimes. So here he is. Now he would like to rush the gate, so there is that overconfidence. He's a 2-year-old. He has had a fair amount of handling. It was, I think, very good quality handling. Not really training, just handling like you handle a young horse. So I'm slipping this right over his ears. He would rather I didn't do that. That's going to leave, but it's something that I'm already seeing. The other thing I just noticed is overnight he took a dump in his water bucket. Well, that's another behavior we'll take into account, because some horses will do that every stinking night. And I'll move a water bucket to avoid it. But it's good to know that he likes to do that. He's got 2 buckets, so he was good to go. He arrived last night. He had overnight to settle in. I did play with him just a little bit, so this is done with a little foreknowledge. He's a 2-year-old, and the first thing you want to do is just form a general impression. So he is almost exactly 2 years old. So what are we seeing? He's sort of pushy. Now I'm using the same equipment that came with him because I want it to be familiar, and I also want to see how he operates and what he's been operated with. This is a very forgiving, soft halter. I'm not that nice. I'll probably put a rope halter on him. Now he came out with sort of a bang, but yet he's waiting for me. I don't mind that enthusiasm as long as he can learn to curb it. The first thing I would notice if I was looking at this colt for an overall impression is he's small. I'm not small. What in the hell is this 6'5" guy doing looking at a horse who right now, I'm going to measure him shortly, but he's about 14'1", I would guess him. And the answer is, what if he's not for me? To explain, and we'll put in a little clip here. I have a yearling granddaughter. And she's going to need a horse. And Ricky, our good old gelding, is pushing 30. And I don't know how long he's going to be usable. He's going to be 28. So, you know, that's an old horse. With a bit of time before she needs a horse to ride a lot, we can put some miles on this young guy if he's the right horse. So what I have to do, and it's hard for me, is I have to look at this horse not as to what I'd like to have, but more so as to what's going to fit a real beginner. Is he kind enough? Is he quiet enough? Is he sane enough? So I'm looking at a couple of things: soundness, saneness, and just his overall demeanor at this point. I'm also shortly going to see him move, because I cannot evaluate a horse in any meaningful way without spending most of my time watching them in motion. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to take a little break while Kim sets up the tripod, and then I'm just going to groom him up here, see how he reacts. So we're here, I just tied this colt up. That's question number one, is does he tie? I was pretty sure he would. This question number two is, how does he feel about being tied? And he would like to be moving around. Okay, he's not doing anything unpleasant, but he wants to paw. He's a little bit antsy, but not bad for a young guy in a strange setting. So I'm just going to groom him up, and then we're going to take him out to the round pen. But you can tell quite a bit just in the process of cleaning him up. Now I want to get into the tack room here, so I'm going to walk around behind him. I'm going to ask him to move his back end. That means very little to him, but he does respond. So, but what I do from the get-go is I go, there you go. And that's not to be mean, but that's just to say, when I need to move you and I cluck to you, that means move whatever I'm pointing at. So I'm going to get my measuring stick, and we'll get that out of the way straight away. If you don't have one of these, if you have more than a few horses, a good quality measuring stick with a level is a great investment. It keeps you honest, because I eyeballed him at about 14-1. Let's see if he makes it. It's going to take his best day to be at 14-1. So you want to measure right at the, before his neck, but right at the front of his withers. And you want that bubble to bubble. Okay. There we go. I'm meticulous about this. I gotta confess, I'm a little fussy. There you go. That's a dead center on the bubble. By golly. Let's take a picture of this. So the 14 hands shows he's not quite at 14-1. 14-1 is 57 inches right there. So I was pretty close. How much will he grow? Well, nobody knows. We'll check back in about 2 years and we will know. But for now, see, this is what's nice about these things. They fold up, and there's a little carrying case you put them in. It'll be about 2 years till he's fully mature, but he's got at least 95% of his skeletal growth now. He's not going to change much. He might grow an inch. He's had good feed. He hasn't been pushed, but he's not like Slim. When I got Slim, he was 3 years old. He stood 14-3. He now stands 15-2, but he was starved. So he was behind the growth curve, caught up his 3-year-old year. This horse is right where he should be. Now, as far as his weight and his nutrition and so on, he banged his eye just a tiny bit overnight. That's the downside to having young horses in strange places. And, you know, there's nothing dangerous in his stall, but young horses were put on earth to injure themselves. And your goal is to make their life's goal as difficult as possible. So you can see he's pretty nosy. He wants to be friendly. He wants to react. All of that's okay for a baby. All of that's okay for a baby. So I'm not going to groom him like we're going to a horse show. But grooming, which is my least favorite thing, has a double value, triple value. One is you're getting your horse clean. The other is you're seeing how he reacts. Like I've had horses, when you went down their hind leg, they'd move or they'd cock a leg or they'd cow kick. You need to know that. You need to know if you can get up under his belly here. You need to know if you can go down over his legs. And at this point, I'm looking at him. He's a pretty good leg colt. He's a little bit long and has a bit of a slope to his pastern, but his feet, his legs are straight. I'm not too worried about that. It'll make him smoother, but it is a small weak spot. Kim, I don't know if you can get over here. Maybe I'll just, he has the most extravagant mane I've seen on a horse in a while. Let me just, and maybe it was apparent when I brought him out, but most of my horses don't have near the mane that this creature has. And you know, it sort of makes him a storybook animal, really. So that's almost like a circus pony mane, you know? And hey, I'm okay with that. What's wrong with a circus pony? So I had to show that mane because if there's nothing else impressive about this horse, and I think there probably is, he damn sure has an impressive mane. And the fact is, people get caught up in that stuff. I don't. I think it's nice. He's got such a luxurious mane, but it's not a point that I even consider. And he's got a forelock to go with it. My word, that's a lot of forelock. Some people really pull their forelock back. I find that it helps with flies. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to comb his mane and tail out, except to just run over him with this body brush, kind of get the shavings out, get him less rumpled, but he doesn't need to put up with that right now, and I hate to groom horses, so that's not a thing. He's got a few nicks on his body from, you know, just pasture play, probably with a friend. That's not new. I just always look, regardless of the horse, to make sure I got 4 good legs, 4 good feet, and no injuries. Now, if you look at his tail, you take notice of everything. He was at a strange place. He had a little diarrhea, a little bit of a loose bowel. That's not surprising. I'll rinse that out after a bit. I'm not gonna rub it out with my fingers right now. I'm just gonna sort of run through things, and maybe later I will comb his mane out, or his tail out a little better. Now, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to watch him shortly. We're going to go out to the round pen. I'm going to watch him very carefully as we move him. But what I want to see is he completely sound? Anything that causes me to question whether he has a problem with his motion, either as to quality or as to moving sound. Because especially for a kid's horse, I know people will say, well, all you need is some old 15-year-old one-eyed gelding who's serviceably sound, too crippled to run off maybe. Well, I've never seen a horse that was too crippled to run off, but I can see them. I've seen them that were too crippled to work and be comfortable. So, yeah, he's got, to use a technical term, he's got the squirts a little bit. That'll go away. So I'm just gonna, he's also got his man parts out there, but I think that was just a little confusion. See if I can pick up his feet. And I'm not picking up all four. I just wanted to see how he was if I reached down at a leg. Right now, all of this is pretty impressionistic. We're gonna take him out to the round pen, move him around, so we'll take a little break and do that. So we're coming out of the barn at this point, and that is part of the deal. In other words, the horse is under constant inspection, and he's walking out pretty politely. Now I'm gonna interrupt this and let him see these two-year-old fillies who tower over him, see if he strikes, see if he squeals, see if he's glad to see him, see if he lays his ears back, get an idea what his overall demeanor is. So he visited with Belinda, and then he politely went over and said hello to Bonnie. And his main objective is to be friendly. I admire that. That's a good thing. He could be squealing and stamping and dancing around, and instead he's just saying, hey, you know, you want to get to know me? He may end up being a popular little guy if he stays here. So we're walking out. He is pretty enthusiastic, and he doesn't mind pushing on me. You can see he's perfectly happy to get on top of me. Now he's a little bit afraid of the video setup in the back of our truck, but regardless, it's non-negotiable. He shouldn't lean on me. And that's a little thing we'll work on. He's rather intrigued. Not only is there a tripod on the back of the pickup, but it's drizzling a bit, and my daughter is under an umbrella. So that's all good, a good test. It's all a good test. Probably, hey, now did you see that? That is not acceptable. He was thinking his own agenda, put his head under my arm and just rooted up. If I'd been a little quicker, I would have quite rudely elbowed him right in the head, because they don't get to do that. Not a big deal, but also not what you want. And to be sort of fair to the horses that were raised here, not something either of the 2-year-olds out in the field would do. It just means that Erin, who owned him, was very kind to him. She's a nicer person than I am. I'm a little more demanding. But what I like is he's standing pretty quiet. He was out here last night. He got to walk around out here, and I just lunged him around a little. It was his second lifetime round pen lesson. But let's slip the halter off him. Just let him go out there. Now last night, when I turned him loose, he just hung in my hip pocket. He already knows that it's more likely that he's going to have to go out to the perimeter of the round pen and do something, and he's very willing to do that. I like that. What I'm not going to do is be real demanding on him. I just want to see him move around, evaluate how responsive he is, evaluate the quality of his movement, evaluate how his mind seems to work. All of this is new, unfamiliar to him. 2 quick things while he's just investigating. One is he did have some diarrhea overnight. Some folks might ask, quite legitimately, look, he's checking out the video setup. People might ask, is that a problem? Should you be medicating him or something? No, that will typically resolve itself. I will be sure to give him only good quality grass hay, minimal grain for a few days, which he would get minimal grain anyway, and that'll stabilize. If it doesn't, then there are things we can do. Second question, legitimate question, would be, aren't you going to have a veterinary soundness exam? I will come clean on something, and that is, in probably close to 60 years of buying horses, I have never had a horse examined by a veterinarian. If I was buying older horses, if I was buying seasoned show or performance horses, I would absolutely get a pre-purchase exam. But on these yearlings, 2-year-olds, and weanlings that I typically buy, I feel like I can learn as much from watching them, observing them, seeing if they move right, seeing if their conformation is right, and beyond that, the risk is acceptable. Plus, again, full disclosure, for the most part, I haven't ever been buying really high dollar horses. I'll say that a different way. I've never paid high dollars for horses. They've ended up, some of them, being pretty valuable. What I tend to look for is the horse that maybe is an opportunity, a horse that I'm not gambling more money on than I can afford to lose, because every horse is potentially a dead loss, and you have to accept that going in. So he's just looking around, he's whinnying a little bit. He's got horses here and horses there. What he's not doing is melting down in the trailer, which we're not going to show you because my wife is camera shy, is my wife and granddaughter watching. So he sees them, he sees the video set up, and he's settled in now. So I'm going to move him around. Now he's playing, he's wiggling his head, he's whinnying. All of that is fine. All of that is fine. I kind of like a playful horse, a horse that is not necessarily stressed. There was an opportunity. Did you see him change leads? That told me a lot about him. Also, last night, he was trying to move around like a low-rent Lipizzan. It was not a real good look. He was trotting out here real elevated, head way up in the sky, back hollowed out, and I thought, uh-oh. And then I thought, give the guy a break. He's never really been subjected to any of this. So he's let down already more than he was last night when he was really kind of overstimulated. So that's the gait to evaluate to a large extent, is the trot. You can tell so much about soundness. Now what I'm going to do is to see if I can stop him and convince him to turn to the inside. The natural tendency will be to turn to the outside. Okay, I'm not gonna interfere just too much yet. His mind was in the Bahamas. Now see, he's looking out. I want him looking in. I'm gonna move this stick, move the whip. There, he looks in, good. I'll wait for him to look in. Wait for his attention to come there. Now, there are two schools of thought on that. There are some guys and some fellas who are pretty famous. They'll jam a horse around until they find that through being stressed. And it works. I just don't see the need for the stress. This takes longer. So I'm not trying to accomplish a whole lot here. I'm more or less just wanting him to move around and see what he's offering me. And he's sort of a cute mover. And he's willing to maintain that lope for a while. That's good.
Now he's looking out, starting to look in. Looking out, looking out, looking out. There, he turned in. And I don't mind that he doubled back. None of that's a problem. Right now, it's more just finding a starting point. I like the fact that he tends to pick up his leads naturally, and the one time he didn't, he did a good job of just correcting it with a nice little lead change. See there, he would have liked to double back against the fence, and I want to discourage that. So I was hoping he'd come into me. I think he was more distracted there by his halter line there. Maybe he was going to put it on. There you go. So that's really what I was hoping to see in the round pen. So he's acting like a young horse. He's acting a little distractible. He's not doing anything rude, threatening, dangerous, unduly stressed. It'll be interesting to see over the several days we'll have him here how that progresses. For now, we're going to suspend working on him here in the round pen, and we're going to take him back into the barn. At the beginning, I said this was going to be a day in the life. Typically, after I worked a horse, I didn't work him very hard. I'd give him a little hose off. I'm sure he's been bathed before, but probably not quite as casually as what I tend to do it. So I'm going to let him just get in the idea that it's okay to get it on his nose. I'm also going to watch. Every so often a horse will strike when that happens. And our well pump throws a little air through things, so I'm going to let that stop because that can scare him. There. Doesn't bother him much. So I'm just going to sort of work on hosing him off, and he's probably going to swirl around a bit. My approach is, if he needs to move, I let him move till he doesn't need it anymore, and then I'll quit. I got myself pretty thoroughly hobbled here. There we go. Side one. So what that tells me is, of course, he's going to react to something that's unfamiliar. But he doesn't overreact, and he does improve. All of this is part of figuring him out. I'm not restraining him, I'm just sort of keeping a little hold on there. And there, he stopped. I'm going to get myself a little bit untangled myself. And that's side two. So I'm pleased with how relaxed he got. Not at all surprised that he found this to be a little different from maybe being cross-tied in a wash rack or held by another person or one thing or another. I want him to where I can just do him wherever I want. I'll tell you what you'll see too with doing this with a horse. You'll find oh no spots. and they'll kick up under their belly or they'll strike, and he showed me none of those behaviors. So I'm going to put him out in the round pen, and while he has a roll, we're going to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing so far. We're out here in the round pen. Going to talk a little bit about what we see so far. I'm also going to turn him loose. He's on his own time. I suspect and hope, despite the fact we just washed him off, cleaned him up a bit, he has a nice roll in the sand. I believe the horses like to roll for a reason. I don't think you could rub a horse as well as they rub themselves when they have a roll. I like to put him out here in the sand because then it does brush off easily instead of turning into mud. But I'm going to turn him loose, and we'll sort of talk a little bit about what I'm seeing so far. And I would invite people to comment, please, about what you think of this horse and whether he's a candidate in the fullness of time to be a kid's horse. So I'm going to turn him loose. I want to see where he goes when I turn him loose. And I'm taking due note that he's a little funny about his ears, but not bad. Well, I kind of like that, you know? I mean, I've just chased him around with a whip, and he's saying, what? You were just asking me to go. You weren't being mean to me, which is true. So far, for a kid's horse, I'm pretty impressed that he's sane, he's sound, he moves well, he's a good size for a kid. One of the challenges is going to be, I'm going to have to ride this pony. And I'm bracing myself for the collective backlash from people saying, you got to be kidding me. I will tell you, experientially, I've started and ridden a lot of horses as small as him. You adapt your style. You say, F the 20% rule. It just doesn't matter. The 20% rule can be stood on its head so easily. The idea that you should be 20% of your horse's weight, no more. I see people that the way they ride, even though they're small, will soar a horse's back in a day. And I've seen bigger people who ride a little lighter, who have a little more skill, and who tailor what they're doing to the physique of the horse, get along just fine. So I think I'm going to go ahead, if we keep this guy and start him and ride him really conservatively a few times as a 2, turn him out and get back to him as a small but more mature 3-year-old. That would be the overall game plan. I'm going to take advantage of the option or the opportunity to keep him here for a few days to see if there's anything I see that makes me say, I don't think so. One of the things I've got to consider is the last thing I need is another horse, especially one that's too small to do anything for me. But you know, much as I don't like to admit it, sometimes it's not all about me. So we'll make that decision and we'll let you know how we came out. Right now, I'm liking this picture. Hope you are too. See you next time.